This is an AI-generated podcast based on the article Let Jesus Take the Wheel, How Dr. Brian English Found His Purpose by Surrendering the Driver's Seat, written by April. The article link is in the show notes. Dr. Brian English, welcome to Kingdom Factor Collective. I'm really glad you're here today.
Thank you so much, April. It's a blessing to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So I want to start with something you said that honestly just stopped me cold. You described your early relationship with God as you were with Him, you were talking to Him, but you were still driving. Jesus was just a passenger. Can you unpack that a little? Like, what did that actually look like in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for a lot of people, and I was one of them, faith can become this thing that looks really good from the outside. I was praying, I was staying connected, I was consulting God, but at the end of the day, I was still making the calls. I was still the one with both hands on the wheel. And early in my career, I was impulsive. I left jobs, I moved around. I was doing what I could within my own human, fleshly power to navigate my career. And I thought that was fine. But there's a real difference between inviting God along for the ride and actually letting Him lead.
That's interesting, because I think most people would look at that version of you and say, that guy has his faith together. Like, you're praying, you're connected. What was the turning point? What actually shifted?
So here's what happened. I was working at a faith-based ministry, and I just felt this persistent clarity. Not a burning bush moment, nothing dramatic. Just this quiet, consistent sense that the Lord was signaling it was time to move. And instead of reacting like I normally would have, I did something different. I waited, I prayed, I fasted. I went into an extended time of prayer and fasting, and I was not in a rush. And I'll tell you, April, the things I was thinking in my own head were one thing, but then the Lord just laid out this path for me that was like a lamp to my feet, a light onto my path. And that path led me to Dallas Baptist University. Does that make sense?
It really does. And I love that you mentioned you weren't in a rush, because I feel like that's the hardest part, right? The waiting. So now at DBU, you're teaching business courses to mostly freshmen, students who are basically standing at the threshold of their professional lives. What does it look like to integrate faith into that space?
That's the secret sauce right there. If you can impress upon students God's plan, God's purpose, God's way, God's perspective, a Christian worldview that enhances everything they do even after they graduate. And that DBU, integrating faith into the curriculum isn't just permitted, it's encouraged. So for me, that's the whole point. I'm not just teaching foundations of business or principles of management. I'm trying to help these young men and women understand how God wired them before they even step foot into the workforce.
You actually call yourself a one-trick pony when it comes to what drives you. Walk me through that, because the trick you keep coming back to sounds like anything but small.
Yeah, my one thing is purpose, helping people discover and walk in their God-given purpose. I'm a Gallup Clifton strength coach. I teach spiritual gifts classes at my church. I work through my GAP coaching practice. And all of it ties back to this one conviction. When people understand how God wired them, everything changes. I genuinely believe if I can get as many people as the Lord allows me to walk in their God-given purpose, the world would be a better place. And here's the part that I think people miss. Knowing what God didn't give you is just as liberating as knowing what He did. Like, I am not gifted in mathematics, and rather than straining against that, I just lean into partnership. I focus on where I know He's given me talents, and I find other people for the rest.
That's such a humble posture, and I think it's rare in leadership circles. You've also been talking about the parable of the talents, not just as a financial principle, but as kind of a life philosophy. What does that look like practically for you?
Right, so the way I see it, if the Lord gives us 2 talents, we'll probably be on His good side if we turn those 2 into 4. We have to flip what the Lord has given us. We cannot bury it in the ground. And that means being intentional with everything: time, money, talent. Someone is in need of the gifts and talents that each and every one of us have. We would be doing a disservice if we didn't embrace our authentic selves and use it for His glory. And with my father passing just recently, time has taken on a whole new weight for me. In Ecclesiastes, it's a vapor. We can get so caught up in things on this earth, but we ought to be storing up heavenly treasures.
I'm so sorry for your loss. And I want to ask, because you spoke about it with such peace. You said, I know where He is. How does that kind of rooted faith, the faith your father modeled, how does that shape the way you lead?
My dad was a deacon. He sang in the choir, he taught Sunday school, he delivered food to the sick and shut in. And as a boy growing into a man, that was very, very impactful for me. He just lived what he believed year after year. And I think that's what real leadership looks like. It's not the title or the framework, it's the life. And when it comes to leading others, I always come back to this. We connect with people through our spaces of vulnerability. If you constantly boast about what you do well, someone who doesn't have that talent can see it, but they can't connect with it. But if you share your shortcomings, your failures, your humanity, that's where connection happens, and that's where trust gets built.
That's really good, and you anchor a lot of this in Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. You said something that stuck with me. For you, that's not a memory verse, it's a job description. I love that framing.
Exactly. The sooner a leader understands who they are, how they lead best, and where they have the most influence, which is often tied to their talents, the better their leadership will be. And all of that flows from surrender, from letting Him drive. I've just been blown away by how allowing Him to lead the way is way more fruitful than anything I could do on my own.
Dr. English, this has been such a rich conversation. If someone's listening right now and they're still white-knuckling the wheel, what's the one thing you'd want them to walk away with?
Take one honest hour this week and ask yourself two questions. What has God genuinely wired me to do well, and what has He not given me that I should stop pretending He has? Write those answers down, share them with someone you trust, and then build your leadership from that foundation. The Lord only made one of each of us. The world doesn't need your imitation of someone else's strength. It needs you, fully surrendered to His purpose, fully deployed for His glory.
That is such a good word. Dr. Brian English, thank you so much for being here. The full article that inspired this episode is linked in the show notes. I really encourage you to check it out. And if this conversation resonated with you, share it with a leader in your life who needs to hear it. We'll see you next time on Kingdom Factor Collective.